Welcome back. Today we have with us Ben Marshall. And I ran across Ben's YouTube channel because I am an electric motorcyclist and I love hearing road trip stories and especially electric motorcycling stories. So Ben, you want to take a minute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Ben Marshall. I live in Lexington, Virginia. I've owned electric motorcycles for almost 3 years now. My first was same as yours, Carl's. Mine was a 2017 DSR. I've never ridden motorcycles much before in the past. Electric motorcycles was my first introduction to the world of motorcycle riding. When I was a kid, I had a 1974 Pooch moped that a few of my buddies took off a jump and it wrecked it. And so my life on motorized two wheels was pretty short growing up. I was in the military for 17 and a half years. And whenever I got out, I literally the next day I started back up at college. And so I was looking for a way to kind of kill some time between classes. And I knew about electric skateboards and I always thought that they were really cool. I rode skateboards whenever I was a kid. And so I was like, oh, I'll get an electric skateboard. I'll kind of zip around town while I wait for my next class, give me something to do, a little taste of adventure. And around that time, Long Way Up was being advertised. It hadn't come out yet, but it was being advertised. And I'd never seen any of the other Long Way adventures, didn't even know about it. Again, I was nowhere near the realm of motorcycle adventure. But I had this electric skateboard for about 6 months, and I was like, man, this is really fun, but the range is limited. It only went about 12 or 14 miles. And I was like, man, I kind of want to go further. I want to see more. I love that it's electric because it's so freeing, the experience of it, the sound or lack of sound. And I was in between classes as I was at a stoplight in the town where my college is. And I saw a motorcycle drive by. It was kind of off in the distance. I saw it kind of zoom by. Now, I don't know if it was electric or not. I just remember that I didn't hear anything. And that's when it clicked. I was like, holy crap, electric motorcycles. Because again, maybe the week before I'd seen the ads for a Long Way Up. And that's when it was like a revelation for me. I was like, everything that I love about this electric skateboard, but with the range of a motorcycle and the freedom of a motorcycle. You can go anywhere, do anything. And I was like, oh my God. And so a week later, Long Way Up, the first 3 episodes came out and I was immediately hooked. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And so I started doing research in electric motorcycles, found out about Zero, found a guy in Connecticut that was selling his 2017 DSR. It was used, but it was really low mileage. And so rented a truck, drove up there, got my DSR. And then from that moment forward, I've ridden every single day. I've not stopped. Unless the roads are iced here in Virginia, which is rare, I ride every single day. I don't know how much you want me to get into, how long I had the Zero for and
We'll
the
get into
live
that.
wires.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. It's funny because we all have this sort of seminal event. I think I mentioned it before we recorded. For me, I was at a National Drive Electric Week event here in Michigan, which, by the way, I'm insanely jealous that you're able to ride because we have ice on the road. And so my Zero's is still in the garage. But all of a sudden, Tony, my Tesla technician, rides into the event with his Zero, and I don't remember what year. I think it was also a 15 or 16, bright orange. And I'm like, mind blown. Wait a minute. There's an electric motorcycle. Okay, now I gotta, and after the event, I'm getting on Facebook Marketplace and I found the 2016 in Springfield, Missouri, and a buddy of mine went down and bought it and brought it back on the truck, and then I outfitted it for quasi touring. So there's this seminal event. But yeah, sort of what's the next step? You mentioned Long Way Up, but I watched the early adopters. You had Terry Hirschner with his dog Charger that was riding all over the place, and you had Craig Vetter and the people. In the early days, you didn't have the battery capacity in the range, so people were streamlining, and that's still a thing. And it should be a thing. I'd love to get some sort of a kit to extend my range to, kind of like what Aptera is doing with ultra efficiency. And then I saw Scott, I'm looking at my notes here, Scott Harkless doing the Zero SRS right across the country. And then recently Rick Flashman with his Energica Xperia, he and his wife. So there's all this cool stuff going on. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to get into this space. So did you also follow folks like that, or was it like Long Way Up and then you just kind of like did your own thing?
No, long way up, and that was it. Obviously, once I started doing research, I found out about Morgan's dad and about all these other people that had started doing cross country trips and the modifications. You know, I have a tendency to just completely dive into something that I'm really interested in. And so I did as much research as I could before I said, okay, I wanted to get the Zero as my first electric motorcycle, or really my first motorcycle, period. So it was interesting to see people that were pushing the boundaries of the perception of what electric motorcycles were capable of. I never had an interest in breaking a record or driving completely across the country as fast as possible in electric. That was never my desire. Mine was purely, I want to take an electric motorcycle and I want to have adventures, and that was it. That is my only desire for everything that I do. But it was cool to see the ingenuity of people, especially the very early adopters. I think that we're all still early adopters, but the initial early adopters, to see how they were able to overcome limitations of the technology, limitations of the designs, limitations of the chemistry, to really push the envelope on what's possible. And for me, the really sad thing is that eventually all of this will become normal. Not the hacking and trying to make things work, but just electrics. They'll become more efficient. They'll have greater range. They'll have better chemistry. This excitement that a lot of us kind of experience with electrics right now, it's going to go away because you're going to have the mass adoption come through. And so just being a part of it now is just exciting enough for me. I don't need to, again, push the envelopes on anything to have fun with it, because I think it's incredible what all these different people are trying to figure out, what they're trying to do in their own way, and how they're trying to make things better. And I think that all these things will kind of increase and elevate the capacity of electrics to really flourish in the next 10 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked to Ben Nelson on our previous podcast with Vehicle to Load, and one of the things that he had done is he built his own electric motorcycle and rode it around Lake Michigan. And even you mentioned the technology, but also the charging infrastructure.
Yeah,
he said he was going into state parks and marinas that had driving up on the dock to get the shore power plug in, because there was nothing else. And now, like you said, it's going to become more commonplace where you have charging infrastructure. Although, as you know, there are growing pains with that.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. No, it's like we started recording. I think in 20 to 30 years, people are going to look back at this podcast, your podcast, my YouTube channel, other YouTube channels from the teens and the 20s, and they're going to be like, man, these guys were just absolute savages for the ways that they had to get around. I mean, and there's no telling what it's going to be like in 20 to 30 years. There's companies that are talking about having charging infrastructures built into roads and stuff like that, like where you're driving and you're charging. But again, I think we're going to look back and people are going to just be amazed at how we traveled right now, because the technology and the processes are going to look so archaic to them in 20 to 30 years, and even 100 years, what's it going to be like? So to me, this is a very interesting time to not only own an electric vehicle, but to be a content creator as well. So,
right. I think it's super helpful to the people that are getting into it now and inspiring. I mean, I watch
absolutely.
what you're doing, and I'm like chomping at the bits. Like, man, I'm looking at the weather's like, man, are we going to melt? I want to get out there on my bike, because you took that trip down to the Harley dealer to get your brakes fixed. And I'm like, man, I just want to get on my bike, and I just bought a 360 camera, and I'm seeing what you're doing with that. I'm like, this is cool stuff, man. This is super inspiring. So I think it's useful even now. But I guess more so now. But yeah, looking back, I mean, in 2018, I drove my 2016 Nissan Leaf from Missouri to Michigan, and it took me 2.5 days. And I was in campgrounds and level 2 chargers. And these days I make that trip in my Tesla and my Kia Niro, like it's no big deal, right?
Yeah.
You went to charge at the one Harley dealership and you weren't able to charge, but you just rolled with the punches, didn't even affect you. I guess I would just speak to, did they ever figure out why that charger wasn't working? And then how do you just roll, right? Oh, I'll just go to the next charger. which on the motorcycle, you got a lot less range. So I admire your courage there.
Well, and this is with all electrics, you're never going to be stranded, with one exception. You're never going to be stranded, but you will be late. And so that's what I have in the back of the mind. There are infinitely more 110 outlets that are in this country than there are gas stations. And so with the Livewire, the charging cable, the EVSE, it stores underneath the seat. If I pull up to a charger and it's broken, I'm like, okay, well, it's busted. I'll look at plug shares, see if there's anything else around. If there's not, well, I guess I'll be slow charging for however long until I have enough range to get to a charging station that is working. And so I think that going with what you're kind of pointing out is, I know that right now the vehicle technology is leaps and bounds ahead of the charging infrastructure technology. And I know that. I know that whenever I first bought my DSR back in 2020, I knew that that's what I was getting into, because that's what everyone else is saying. And so again, when I take my trips and I take these little small adventures, in the back of my head, it's always there that, well, it may not work whenever I get there, and that's fine. But with that charging station at that dealership, I mean, I guess it would have to be which one, because they're often, you pull up to a Harley-Davidson dealership that has an electric charger, and you're like, hey man, y'all's thing's busted. They're like, our what? Like they don't even know, And most of the times they're just, like a tech or someone that works behind the counter. Like, they don't really know. The general manager typically is more aware of it than they are. The dealership that I typically go to up in Manassas, which is where I got my brakes installed in one of my recent videos, the charger works, but it's out of network. It's no longer in ChargePoint's network. Like, you pull up the ChargePoint app and it's not even there anymore, but it still works. You just have to do like a backwards way of starting the charge. I think one of y'all's previous guests was talking about that with EV or with Electrify America and the Mach-E. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Most of the time it works. I think that what I show in my videos, it would be a very boring video if I showed charging working the entire time. I would say for me, DCFC works 98% of the time, and only very small exceptions does it not work. Showing that something works all the time, at least with my channel that's about adventures and stuff, I don't think that would be very interesting, because it's the interruptions that are part of the journey. It's the frustrations, it's the challenges that you have to overcome. Right. And that's what I want to show. And not to dissuade people from getting electrics, but that's what makes a good story. No one wants to go watch a movie because they think that the hero's going to win in the end. There's always that tension of, is he going to make it? Are they going to be able to do it? Are they going to be able to get it? Yeah. How
challenge and resolution.
Yeah. How are they going to overcome this? Like, that's what people want to see. And so, there were far more frustrations with just traveling than electric networks. I know that my videos, it does show, because I do want to capture that. Yeah, like I said, if I showed my 2,500 mile trip that I did last year, where pretty much every charger worked, I don't think it would be that much of a big deal. But
all right.
Yeah, I was telling Larry, you remember you and I were looking through some of my footage from my Tesla trip to Arizona, and like the last 2-3 days coming into Phoenix, it was like charge drive. Okay, we went up to the Grand Canyon. It's like, there's no meat here, right? Nobody wants to see me charging at a supercharger 50 times.
Yeah, it would be incredibly boring to see you just go through without any challenge. Like, that would defeat the point of documenting it.
Right. Let's switch gears. We already talked about the Livewire, but at some point you made the switch from the Zero to the Livewire. So walk us through your thought process there, and what were the motivating factors for that?
So from the very beginning, I wanted the Livewire. Like, that's what I wanted. It had all the features that I wanted. It had the fast charging that I wanted, but there was no infrastructure for it where I'm at now. Or at least then there wasn't an infrastructure. There were a bevy of level 2 chargers in my area. Everywhere. They're everywhere. Whether that's Tesla Destination or just, state, local, J1772 stuff. Most of which are free. I don't think that I've ever had to pay for anything level 2 in Virginia, at least. I was like, okay, well, I can't I don't want to get a Livewire because I really wouldn't be able to go anywhere very far because, again, at the time, there was no level 3. There may have been like one close to my area. There was a lot around the DC area. But so I bought the Zero, and I was going to get the charge tank, which allows rapid charging. It's a 6 kilowatt charger. Really, it's 5.5 for the DSR. And so I got that. Again, kind of keeping my eye on PlugShare. Every few months, I would go and check, okay, is there level 3 yet? Is there level 3 yet? And so I had my 2017 DSR. I had it for about 9 or 10 months, and I was checking PlugShare for level 3 charging, and I checked it, and holy crap, there were like 7 now in my area. And I was like, all right, well, that's it. Going to sell the Zero and get the Livewire now. And so, I mean, it was not much of a decision process for me. I found the last brand new Livewire, Harley-Davidson Livewire in the state of Virginia. Found it, rode up to the dealership. That video's on my channel. It's whenever the belt broke on my Zero DSR. Went and test rode it, and I was like, okay, that's it. I'm in love. Like, this is everything that I wanted out of a motorcycle. It's incredible. It's sexy. And so that was it. I think I put 13,000 miles on my Zero DSR in about 9 months, just to kind of give you an inclination of how much I ride. And so, yeah, it was 100% because of the available network. That's why I decided to get the Livewire.
It's the fast charging was like the main thing to take you to the Livewire?
The availability of it in my area, because I mean, I loved the way that the Livewire looked. I'd never test ridden one up to that point, but I wanted to take trips, and I knew that I couldn't really take far trips if I bought the Livewire initially. And plus, the price was really high at the time. I didn't buy the Livewire until the price came down. And the DSR that I bought used, it was I don't want to say it was dirt cheap, but compared to a new one, it was cheap. So it was, part of that was just the price. The price is too high for me. I didn't want to shell out that much in the beginning. But yeah, there was as I looked at PlugShare, there was a level 2 network in every direction. And so I knew that, okay, if I get the DSR with a charge tank, I can at least take longer trips than what the range of the bike is on just one charge. So that was my motivating factor behind that, was what's the charging network in the areas that I want to ride. The Zero DSR, it'll ride in those areas. But again, once I saw that level 3 came up, and it could get me to the places that I wanted to go, I could do a cross-country trip on a Livewire. That's when I decided that it was time to buy one.
Cool.
Yeah. So Larry, I don't think you're in this space, but so the Livewire has DC fast charging, CCS, and then you still have a J1772, but I think the level 2 or level 1 charging is relatively slow. Is it 1.52 kilowatts, something like that?
It only charges at level 1 rates and level 3 rates. You can still charge at a level 2 charger, but it won't. But you're only going to charge it a kilowatt or so.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing that I remember seeing on Long Way Up, where I thought, they were their sag wagons were Rivians, and I know that they were of course it's a whole production, right? And they were installing the level 2 chargers going along the way. And one of the things I thought was, well, how come they didn't take a Zero with a charge tank? Because it would have made it so much faster, because there really was no DCFC going up. But I know there are reasons for it. I'm sure Harley was involved, that sort of thing. But that was in the back of my mind. It's like, well, if it had level 2 charging that was a little bit faster, that would have made that trip a little bit more palatable. Yeah,
at the time, because for Long Way Up, they actually demoed the DSR Black Force editions. Or no, they were just regular black or DSRs. That was the first electric bike that they demoed for that show. And I'm sure that there was some financial incentives behind it. Maybe Harley kind of helped cover some of the cost of the trip and stuff like that. I mean, I have no idea, but from my own experience with a Zero DSR, unless they really modified it, I don't think that I would have wanted to ride a Zero DSR that far, just because of the own mechanical troubles that I had with my DSR. I had to replace the motor bearings 3 times in it, and I was not riding over terrain that they were riding over. So I'm not sure that the DSR would have made it that far. I'm not saying that it can't, but at least not without a chain conversion kit, I wouldn't have tried that.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess I was
so.
looking at it strictly from the charging aspect, but that's
for charging.
Point.
Yeah, charging 100%. But riding on the roads that they ride on, I don't think that you would want to do more than 150, 300 miles tops. I've ridden a local Jeep trail with, Larry, you're talking about the video earlier of me taking the Livewire off road. That was the total day was 50 miles. Most of it was off road, and that beat the living crap out of me. Like I was done for days after. So I can't even imagine trying to ride those kind of roads for more than 200 miles. I don't think you'd be able to take it. But back to your point, Carl. Yeah, it was kind of a head scratcher because Rivian were the ones that installed those juice boxes, the level 2 juice boxes, going all the way up. But I think in the end it was probably better that they did them on the live wires. I mean, obviously it encouraged me to get a live wire,
yeah, and that's a good point.
Yeah, but it was
go ahead.
It was kind of curious why they didn't take advantage of that, but
right. It's a good point. If you're only doing 150 miles, then maybe you're doing one charge in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not really worried about charging speed. You just need
availability. You're worried about the availability of it, and then the quality of the bike. You want a bike that's going to take abuse.
So speaking of taking abuse, you've got a project running now where you've bought a second live wire, and it looks like you're outfitting it for that kind of duty. So
it's not an official term, but I'm long way upifying my other live wire.
Good one. And what's your goal with that? Is that to take it on one of the cross country off road trails?
Yeah, so there are a series of routes all across the country. Some go across the entire country, like the Trans-America Trail. It starts off West Virginia, but you can ride from coast to coast, all off road. I think there may be a few sections where you would have to ride on a paved road, but for the most part, it's all unpaved. And there's also a organization called Backcountry Discovery Routes. They're 10 to 12, I think, and they're pretty much in every state for the most part. And so my goal is to ride all of them on my modified Livewire. Eventually, not all at once or anything like that, but that's what I want to do, is to ride all of these Backcountry Discovery Routes on my own custom Livewire. And the first trip will be in May. I've got 2 other friends that have electric motorcycles, different brands. And so we're going to ride what's called the Mid-Atlantic Backcountry Discovery Route. It's just over 1,000 miles. Starts off at the Tennessee-Virginia border, and it goes all the way up to the Pennsylvania-New York border. And so we're going to do that over 10 to 14 days, something like that. So that's going to be the inaugural run of it, the kind of test run to make sure that all the work that I've done to it so far, it's going to hold up. And the Mid-Atlantic BDR, it's the least challenging or the least technical of all the BDRs. It's not going to push the limits necessarily. It's just going to make sure that everything that I've done to it, it's going to hold up. So,
right. And then there's also camping gear and charging.
Yeah.
So how does charging look along the trail? Are you going to have to go off trail to find charging, or just campgrounds with power?
Yeah. So right now it's going to be campgrounds. And for the most part, I can only do level 1 the entire way. My other 2 friends, Stephen Day, he just got his Xperia, I think a week ago. And then Kevin Edwards, he's actually one of the first people that I know of that have done the Trans-America Trail on an electric motorcycle. He's got a 2021 DSR. He's heavily modified it. He's got some DigiNow chargers, which are just aftermarket chargers that are compatible with Zero. And he's done a lot of suspension work and conversion work on his bike, so it's definitely capable of going off-road. He and his wife, every summer, they take a really big motorcycle trip. She's got a WR 250, I think. And so he can fast charge at these campgrounds and RV parks and stuff like that. And then obviously Steven, he can do level 2 charging with his Xperia. So I'm going to be the one that's going to kind of drag everybody down as far as charging speed goes. But the BDR group, they recommend no more than 150 miles a day already. And so on the trails that we're going to be on, I would say the max speed is maybe 45 miles an hour. And so I'm fairly confident that that my bike will be able to go 130, 140 miles without needing a charge on those roads. I haven't tested it yet. I hope to get my bike back probably in the next month or so to test it on some gravel roads, but I don't think that it'll be that much of a challenge. I mean, you ride all morning, you stop to get some food, plug it into a little outlet, get 10 to 20 miles, and then you kind of go back on. So I don't think that charging will be a challenge, but I could be wrong. So we'll see.
Right, because for road biking, it's the speed and therefore the air resistance that really makes the difference with range. So if you're going below 45, I mean, that's what I like to do of the back roads is, here in Michigan, especially along the lake shore, I just love to cruise at 45, 50, something like that. And that really bumps your range up. But if you're going trails, obviously the wind is not what's providing the drag.
No, and I will lose some energy just because it'll be on gravel roads. There's going to be a little bit more energy expended, so it won't be the same as me riding at 35 on the hard roads, but it'll be pretty comparable. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. It's 55 miles an hour on an electric motorcycle, at least for right now. That is 100% the sweet spot. And I'm not a rider again that likes to break records and travel as fast as possible. That's just not the kind of rider that I am. Even if I had a gas bike, I wouldn't want to do that. And so thinking of like getting on the interstate and going 70, 80, 90 miles, that to me, that's not fun, because everything looks the exact same on the interstate.
Agree. Yeah.
It's all the same. Yeah. Whereas you take back roads, there's character to the road, there's curves, there's, hills and rolling, it's a lot more fun to ride on this kind of roads already. And so,
and on electric, you hear things too, right? You see things.
Yeah.
And of course, you always smell things, and hopefully, since you're not smelling your own exhaust, you smell some interesting stuff, even if it's a dead skunk.
No, absolutely.
But you hear stuff too. Like I always find when I encounter wildlife, they don't even know what to do with me, right? So they're so stunned, they're not running away.
Yeah.
But hopefully, they don't run into my path either.
Yeah,
so.
I've definitely smelled a few bears before I saw them riding. So.
That's good. Thoughts about people who might be interested in getting into electric motorcycling?
I would say that, right now, if you're listening to this in 2023, 2024, 2025, just do your research on the areas that you're trying to drive to. Understand what the different charging levels are. Understand what the charging speeds are for motorcycles. To me, that it is the best way to experience an electric vehicle is on two wheels in the back of a saddle. There's no other way that I would want to experience traveling, at least at the moment. And so just do your research. Join Facebook groups. There's Facebook groups for every single big motorcycle brand, at least the ones that are here in the States. You've got Livewire, Energica, and Zero. Those are your big three. Join those Facebook groups. Look at what people are saying about the bikes at the time. Look at what capabilities are. And again, just try to see what it would be like in your area. Look at PlugShare. Look at what level chargers are in your area before you kind of dive in, because, and I'm sure that it's the same with vehicles as well. People kind of jump in with an expectation and not knowledge, or not any kind of accounts on what ownership is like. I mean, I've pulled up to Electrify America stations many times, and you can tell that is someone else's first time trying to figure out how to charge their vehicle. And they're just frustrated and nothing's working, and they're on the phone with support. Just do a little bit of research, talk to people first, test ride the motorcycles. And that would be the best advice that I could give.
Yeah, that's great. And obviously consider your use case. For me, I decided to go down the road of the SRS, which has 6 kilowatt onboard charging. Mm-hmm. And I'm still waiting for my second 6 kilowatt rapid charger like Scott Harkless has, which will give me a total of 12. Yeah. My reasonings where I live in West Michigan is, yes, we're getting DC fast charging along the main corridors. But if you look at the lakeshore routes, you're not seeing DCFC along those yet. And especially if you go up into the less populated areas like the Upper Peninsula, I mean, it's long and far between. You can barely get a Tesla across the UP. And so for me, I thought, well, if I go this route, I'm at least going to be able to go to campgrounds, because there are campgrounds everywhere. And, I have the Tesla charger cable like Scott has with the Tesla tap. So for me, that makes sense. would I love to have DC fast charging on my Zero? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the moment that if and when they come out with a DC fast charging module in lieu of that second 6 kilowatt AC charger, I'm all over that, because then you have all three, right? To me, the Achilles heel of the Livewire and the Xperia so far is that the level 2 charging is relatively slow. And so where I ride, that doesn't make sense. But for what you're doing and what others doing, what Rick Flashman is doing, it totally makes sense. And I'm not going to get into this argument which one is better. At some point, I'm guessing bikes are going to have all of those, and then it's just the usual discussion, I love this brand versus that brand.
Yeah. When you pull up to a gas station, the gas station doesn't know, or the nozzle doesn't know if it's going in a Toyota or a Chevy. It has no idea. But when we're talking about electrical architecture and different voltages, it's very complicated. And so that's why there's such a disparity right now with you got level 1, level 2, you got Tesla, you got J172, you got CHAdeMO, you got CCS, all these different variables. Obviously, the lack of standardization is hurting the growth of the industry, but I think that's kind of a necessarily evil for right now. You're talking about level 2. In Europe, it is completely different. There is very little DCFC because their AC charging structure, most of their charging stations are 10 to 20 kilowatts. At least in my part of the country on the East Coast, you don't see AC chargers that are that high in wattage or in kilowatts. I think most of the ones in my area are 6 to 7 kilowatts.
The standard charge point, dual 7 kilowatts.
Yeah. And for people that have Zeros over in Europe and other parts of the world, they don't have to worry about having a device that, like what Scott makes for his, that allows dual port charging, because a single cable is kind of ruling it all, which is what DCFC is. When I had my Zero, I bought the 2 quick chargers that go with. So Zero sells a quick charger. It's a 800 watt charger. It's an external charger that I think for their intents, they just said, keep it in your garage or keep it in your car, so that whenever you plug your car in or your motorcycle in overnight, if you want to get a little bit of extra charge in it to kind of chop down the charging time, you can use this external little charger. Well, I bought 2 of those and I installed them on my motorcycle, on my Zero DSR, and I ran a splitter cable to that auxiliary cable that's on the back of the Zeros. And so I was able to charge using the rapid charger tank and my onboard charger and these 2 quick chargers. So I could get 9 kilowatts when I had my DSR.
I did exactly the same thing, except I stuck mine in the side case.
Yeah, but I needed 2 cables to do that.
Yeah.
And so if I showed up to a station and there was already one car there, well, I guess I'm only charging at 5.5 kilowatts. Whereas with DCFC, it's 1 cable to rule them all. But again, like you were saying, it really depends on the area that you're going to be riding and where you're going to try to ride to, and like you said, the use case. I wanted to travel farther than my area, and so that's why I went with DCFC. But again, on the East Coast, DCFC is everywhere. It's all over the place on the East Coast. I know that the West Coast is the same thing, and from my own tours across the country, I know that the Midwest is a ghost town for DCFC.
That's where we are, Upper Midwest.
It's just not there yet. There's not the need for it.
It's coming.
Yeah,
I mean, when I moved to Michigan in 2018, sort of this line between the big cities in Michigan and Lower Michigan, Ann Arbor, Lansing, Grand Rapids, there were no DCFCs north of that except Teslas. And, and I work for the utility where part of what we're doing is giving rebates. So we're seeing that growth. We know it's coming. We also know with NEVI and the IRA and all that stuff, it's coming. It's being built, but it's not there yet. Right. So I'm kind of looking forward to a day when both the vehicles will have that capability and that is more,
universal.
More pervasive. Yeah. So,
no, absolutely.
So you mentioned you're waiting for your bike to get back. You're having it out, some more work done to it. Can you share that?
Yeah. So last week I dropped it off at a suspension shop to get the rear suspension looked at. So on my Livewire, I removed the entire front end of it, all the steering head assemblies. I took it off, Harley-Davidson has its first adventure bike called the Pan America. I took the entire steering assembly from the Pan America, made a few small modifications. I was actually surprised that it didn't take much, because a lot of the internal components are the same in the steering head. Slapped it on the live wire, so now I have 2 more inches of height on the front of the live wire. And so I needed the back end to be raised up, and I needed some more travel distance. That is 100% beyond my scope of practice or experience or know-how. And so I dropped it off about 100 miles away to a suspension tech, and he's going to take everything apart suspension-wise, kind of look at it and really tweak things, maybe rebuild the back suspension for me so I can get another inch in the back, more travel distance and stuff like that. And so he said it should take about a month. Then I'll go back and get it. And then I have one more modification that I'm doing to the bike, and then it'll be 100% ready to go after I get the back wheel sorted out. So
how is that rear suspension? Is it dual shock or a monoshock? Like
it's a monoshock that has a small nitrogen tank built into it. It's a Showa suspension, and it's a great shock. I just need more travel with it. You know, it obviously from my video that you saw it. I mean, it'll take off-road beating. I don't know for how long it will, but I mean, it's a great shock. I just need more height with it. So he's going to see whether or not it needs to be completely replaced, or if he can just modify the shaft to make it longer or whatever. So
cool. And then, so when you did the front end, just had to change the bearings and everything were the same?
So the bearings were the exact same, like the exact same model number and everything. And so just for the audience, there are only 2 other live wires that are like this in the world, and they're sitting in museums right now because they were the ones from Long Way Up. And those were built by a team of engineers in about 4 to 6 weeks. But there's no manuals on how to do this. There's no documentation on how to do this. So I literally had to just study Long Way Up. I would have to freeze frame it in certain parts to kind of look at maybe how they did things. Now I've actually talked to a couple of the engineers now over the last few weeks, just kind of picking their brains on what exactly they did. Everything was built in-house. A lot of things were custom made. There were some off the shelf parts that were used, but anyways, I went in this pretty much blind, and so I had to figure things out as I went along. And I would pretty much buy the cheapest component out of the whole assembly, which was like the lower steering head. I bought that first because I didn't want to buy everything, because I didn't want to put myself in a place where I had these parts that I couldn't use now. And I was like, okay, I would look at this. I would look at the live wire. How can I get this to fit? And so I had to grind the fork stops on the Pan America lower clamp. I did that a couple times and eventually got to fit. And then once I got that lower clamp to fit by grinding down the fork stops, everything just went in. Like there was I didn't have to adjust anything else, which I was really surprised about. So going into it, a lot of blind moves, which could have been bad, but luckily it all kind of worked out. So yeah, it's the entire front end of the Pan Americas on the live wire now. The forks, rotors, brakes, the wheels, the handlebar is still the live wire handlebar, but the risers, all of that is Pan America.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, right, the old Harleys, there's, doing the choppers. So people have been taking the front end off of their Harley, breaking them out, changing them all around. So I think that's just a Harley thing to do. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so I had to dive into the parts catalog on a lot of different models and cross-referencing, okay, where were the same parts used? Okay, this bearing is the same as this bearing. This bearing is the same. This screw is the same as this screw. And so I kind of, the more that I did it, the closer I got to the solution of, okay, I'm pretty sure that I can do this without, needing to custom make everything or custom order everything. So it is, and it's still the same rake angle and everything on the front end. There are a lot of similarities between the Pan America and the Livewire from a design standpoint, and so it's shifted over pretty easily.
That's cool. That's good info.
Yeah.
So if you're taking your trip, your inaugural trip in May, I'm going to guess you're not going to be around for electrics at the Dragon. Are you familiar with that event?
Yeah, I think it was mid-May this year, right?
Yeah, it's 14th to the 20th. So I was planning to go.
So I may be able to make it because I didn't make it last year because I was doing my other tour. I rode to Chicago last year around that time. Now I get back from my honeymoon on May 7th, and I've already got the trip planned for May 30th that we're going to start. So I don't know. We'll see if I can squeeze in a day or two for Electrics at the Dragon.
Okay.
If I can trailer it down there, I could definitely do it then. But
yeah, that's what I'm planning to do. I just bought a Tesla with a recent price drop with a trailer hitch, so I'm planning to trailer mine down. My wife has a friend down near Maryville, Tennessee, so I think I'm gonna
two birds and one stone.
Yeah, there you go. She's happy, I'm happy. Happy wife, happy life. So
you want to go down there to see your friend? So, I guess I'll go ride the back of the Dragon.
Yeah, and I guess we had to buy a Tesla just so we can tow a trailer now.
yeah. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how timing of things works out. I would love to do it again because I missed it last year, and I know that you guys had a lot of fun doing it.
I wasn't there last year either. My daughter graduated from college, so I couldn't get a pass on that one. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So, good. Well, maybe we'll see you there, but we'll certainly follow your adventures, and yeah, we'll put a link to your channel in the show notes, and people can follow along. I think it's really cool what you're doing.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So
yeah, and then before you hang up, what is since you're out there experimenting with the different chargers, and now Tesla's got their design kind of nationalized. What's your gut thought? Where do you think it's going to go? What do you think we're going to look like in a couple of years?
I don't know. I know that Tesla, they're piloting the CCS adapter for their stations. They did it in 3 countries over in Europe. And there's words of it happening here soon because of the people kind of caught wind that it may be happening soon. I think that Tesla got away with it because they were the first ones to market with it for a cross-country network for charging back in the early 2000s. In Europe, they don't have that charger, that charger plug. So they never got away with it in Europe. Everybody uses the Meinike's Type 2 in Europe. And so why they were able to do that here in the US, again, I think because they were the first ones to market with it. I don't know, as more competition comes out, as more of these big companies, big vehicle companies are dipping their toes in electric vehicles, the markets are going to expand. I don't know at this point. If they wanted to win this, they would have allowed the standardization of their plug 10 years ago. They would have taken the proprietary license off of that and just let it be a universal thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that, again, it helped them in the very beginning, but I think now, I don't think that it's going to be very beneficial for them. Obviously, if they're still selling Teslas, that's great, but they're not going to dominate the market forever. You've already got other brands that have way faster charging than they do. Kias and the Taycans, they all charge infinitely faster than the Teslas do, or at least right now they do. And so I think it would be in their best interest to open up their supercharger network with CCS enabled, but I can't see how having your own proprietary system is beneficial long term. I can't think of anything that's proprietary that's beneficial long term.
Early on, I think it was to their advantage because they owned everything, right? So, right, you have the hardware, you have the software, and you have the charging network, and you're
the first to the market.
Yeah,
you're the first to the market to do it. So obviously, no one's going to bat an eye or think, "Oh yeah, okay." Because back then, in 2008, 2009, people were like, "Oh, electric cars, really?" But they pioneered everything, and no one really batted an eye. But now that it's kind of getting widespread, we're not at the cusp of jumping that gap yet to widespread adoption. But yeah, I think that'll just kind of come back and bite them in the ass. I don't. Proprietary never really works out long term. So I think that they should jump ship and just go CCS or whatever the national standard is going to be.
Yeah, I think for now we're all going to adapt our way out of it, but at some point it's got to converge. Just like
because
CHAdeMO is going away, even Nissan has gone to CCS for the Aria, so it's converging.
Well, it doesn't matter if you are in California, if you're in Florida, if you're in Washington State, if you're in Maine. there is one type of gas nozzle. That's it. There's only one size. And every car manufacturer now globally uses the exact same petrol nozzle. And it's clearly working out just fine. You know,
Right.
think of how detrimental to a company it would be if they came out with a combustion vehicle that had a very specific petrol nozzle.
Yeah, it's called
They would be dead.
It's called hydrogen.
Yeah. Like they would be dead. Because it's like, why would we, you know, use something that's different, that's not universal? So I think that if all the manufacturers kind of get together and standardize something, if there's a global plug that works everywhere in the world, that I think that that's when electrics are really going to start to take off, because it's less hassles that people have to jump through. Because when I'm charging my Livewire, people are like, "Can you charge it at Tesla?" And you're like, "No, man, like you like." And obviously people come up to me, and this is every single time I charge, and it's not an exaggeration. Every time I charge at a level 3 station, people come like, "Oh my God, electric motorcycles?" And like same reaction with you, Carl. Like, yeah, they've been around since 2006. Like,
right. Yeah.
But again, yeah. And so they see it's electric, and then they lose their minds again when they see that it's a Harley-Davidson, you know? And they're like, wait, does it make any noises? Like, no, it doesn't make any noises.
But those are fun conversations, but they just
no, they are.
They slow you down a little bit.
It does, but you know, I'm always willing to talk to people because they have the interest, and I carry cards with me now that link everybody to my channel. So when they do come up, I just, you know, hand them a card. The card says what the range is, how far I can go, how long it takes me to charge, because that's the most common question.
Right.
That's on the business card, so that's always really funny.
Oh.
But yeah, I think the lack of standardization is what's really hurting all of this right now. And once all these makers can decide and agree that, okay, we're all going to go with CCS or MCS or whatever the charging nozzle is going to be, once that happens, you know, I think it'll really change. Like, I think that there should just be one charging, not a single stall, but one type of stall. You know, you go to a petrol pump, you can determine if you're getting an octane level or if you're going to get diesel. Obviously, diesel is going to be a different nozzle. But
right.
You know, imagine like with you, Carl, pulling up to a charging station. You still have a CCS plug. Maybe it doesn't use CCS. It just still uses the J1772.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, okay, I want to charge at a level 1 rate, and you select level 1. Or I want to charge at a level 2 rate, and you select level 2. Or I want to charge at a level 3 rate, and then I can charge at a level 3 rate. But it's just one station, just like a gas pump.
And one payment form, right? So I don't.
Yeah, and
right now
and
I have
one payment form.
Yeah, I have like 12 charging apps on my phone.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are just for Canada, but it's kind of ridiculous.
It is.
So with that being said, you know, Out of Spec started up a tweet to start complaining to some of these charging companies, and he's been getting some traction. And I wonder if, you know, especially you and Carl been out there doing the hard work of charging and testing all out, that we couldn't somehow, you know, like get on with Out of Spec and put some pressure on the government that let's get this done, right? Let's push it through the standardization of paying the plug.
Well, I think
Have
some
you
of
seen
that
Out of Spec.
some of that is happening, Larry. So for example, with the NEVI funding, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, they have minimum charging standards. They want it to be accessible to anybody. So they have to have credit card payment, so that, you know, you don't have to join some special club or get, you know, on the monthly plan, something like that. So I think the pressure from the users is already there. And I think now we have enough EV drivers that they're on those decision-making panels. I mean, you know, we were talking before we hit record, you know, back in the day when I was in Kansas City in 2014, you know, they put charging stations in really stupid places because they were well-intentioned, but they had no clue of how it really works. And I think some of that's going away.
Yeah, I think over time it will. I made a video a few weeks ago. It was called, like, it took me 13 hours to go 100 miles or something like that. I pretty much rode through a dead man's land for electric networks. There's nothing out there, with the intention knowing that I would probably get stranded or delayed, as I call it. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, and so I pull up to this to Nissan dealership, and they have an electric charger there. And it had worked in the past. It's like one of these really old ABB units. I mean, it looks like a refrigerator. just massive thing. And so I pull up there, and again, I should have gone and PlugShare and looked at, the reviews on the station and make sure that it's working and all this other stuff. Well, I didn't do that. I typically don't do that, and that's what always bites me in the butt later on. But anyways, so I'm trying to get this thing to work, and it's like cash only. I'm like, what?
What? I've never seen one like that. We got to drop coins in it?
No, exactly. It's like, how am I supposed to pay this? And it says cash. Like, someone had to go into the system and select, because it had a card reader, it had an RFID, but none of those things worked. Someone had to go in there and say, let's make this cash only. For pay who? This is in the middle of a parking lot somewhere. Like, who am I going to pay? And so I'm going through the menu screens to try to figure out what it was. And I see a menu that says nutrition facts. And I'm like, why would this have nutrition facts? And obviously I look at it to see what the caloric intake is of this charging unit, But it's just like, okay, this is not some naturally made thing. This is a man-made thing. How is this here? How is this working the way that it is now? How have the trail of decisions led this to this point right here, to where this thing is telling me nutrition facts? And so again, it goes back to what we were kind of discussing before we recorded, was people have the right intentions, but they are just screwing up execution left and right. But again, it's still very new. I know that they're policymakers and decision makers. They're making choices, and they don't have, and I think having councils is really great, because you do have people that are well versed in this industry that can vet certain ideas and stuff. But oh my God, like, I just don't get how someone's decision could have led to me in that particular point.
But I think it's ignorance and not maliciousness.
Oh, no. I don't think that someone intentionally said, oh yeah, we're going to make these people pay cash. It's just, I just don't see how it can be so dumb.
But again, I think it's getting better. I mean, part of my job at the utility is helping out the team that selects locations, and they come to me and say, hey, what do you think about these 2-3 locations? And I'll say, well, this one's a lot better because there's something to do, and it's more along these corridors. And I know there's already a charger here and here, and this one is a perfect fit in between. But in the early days, you didn't have that experience.
Yeah,
I would have to say, though, that it is discouraging. We have 2 members that are part of a college. I won't say name, and it's a larger college, and a lot of the guys are in there. Look, I got to pay for fuel, and there's no way you two are going to get to come for free in charge. And they had a lot of chargers there, and these guys were able to put pressure on and get most of them disabled. So that was a malicious. And I could see the Nissan guy at the dealership going, oh, how can we screw that? Let's put cash. Then they, I could see, actually. So I'm on the other side. I think there are still some unfortunate, delays just because of that.
And and the point that I really want to put behind that is there was a way for me to check to make sure that charger was working. I just didn't do it for whatever reason. So there are ways to make sure that the places that you're going that are working. It is just a pain to have to go through that hassle, especially if you're going to be doing a trip. You got to kind of do a little bit of research to see if the charging networks are open or if that charger is working. But there is a way to do it. It's just not the most convenient thing to do. And it's like you're talking about the maliciousness of it. It is 100% ignorance. Probably the biggest reason why I decided to start my YouTube channel was to show people that you can take trips on electric motorcycles, that it is 100% possible, because I would watch videos of people talking about their electrics or whatever, and you go in the comments section and it's just ignorance after ignorance after ignorance. And so instead of me just going into these comment sections and saying, no, you're wrong, I was like, you know what? I'm going to make content to show that it's possible. And instead of dropping a comment, I'm going to drop a link to a video of one of my videos and let that do the talking. And I'm not going in, trying to champion electrics. I'm just trying to show what the truth is. And again, that's why I show that sometimes chargers are broken, because I want to have actual experience that will shut these people up, or to at least give them the opportunity to educate and inform themselves that maybe the stance that you have isn't entirely right. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am saying that you're not right. But yeah, again, I think that we're still so very early into this. It will get better over time. I would love to have seen what it was like 100 years ago, 120 years ago, whenever petrol first started to come out. I would love to see a wife's reaction as her husband drives a Model 4 down the driveway. It's like, hey, honey, like, check out this new thing I just got. And, them going through the pains of trying to find a chemist shop, driving wherever, I'm sure that the irritations that his wife had were probably the same ones that my fiance has when I take her on a ride somewhere, like, oh God, another charging station. Oh God, another chemist shop. I'm sure it was the exact same. And so it really makes me laugh when I think of, it would have been so cool if they had a video camera back then to kind of document that stuff, because it's the exact same as it is today, and then I'm sure that in 100 years, whatever the new fuel source is going to be, if it's nuclear fusion in your pocket or whatever it is, I'm sure that it's going to be the same thing, Oh, great, another car exploded. That's great. Yeah.
Oh, I
got
got
a meltdown at the school.
Had to go out of my way to buy one of these Mr. Fusion fuel pellets.
Yeah.
Like in Back to the
Oh,
Future.
great. My gravity tracker's off again. Great. The car's floating,
Yeah.
That's
Good
funny.
stuff.
I think, that's a good way to look at it. I haven't done that, but you can imagine they were, putting glass jars in their seat to get extra gasoline so they can get back home, and how dangerous, right?
Oh, yeah. And then you gotta, okay, don't hit any bumps, please. I don't want the.
Oh, man. That's a great way to look at it.
I always laugh when people talk about electric motorcycles. There's that one photo of a Livewire that's being, put out by a team of firefighters. It's one photo, but everybody takes that as like all of them are like that. Like, oh, you're riding with that. You got that big battery between your legs and it's a big fire hazard. I'm like, what are you sitting in right now? You're sitting on top of a fuel cell. Like, the fact that you're driving around in combustible gas, like, doesn't really scare you at all. But
yeah, and we've normalized it. We've normalized the fact that it's a carcinogen, and that anybody can go and pour a gallon of fuel and have 33 kilowatt hours of energy sitting there ready to do whatever, good or bad. So
I grew up as a kid. My dad's business partner, they were on a way to a luncheon, and he got sideswiped and the gas tank exploded. It was a V-dub. And so his whole side of his face and arm is scarred, from being burned. My dad dragged him out of the car. But as a kid growing up, I saw that, and listened to that story over and over. So, but like Carl's saying, we've normalized that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's been standardizations to make it safer and stuff like that. But I feel more safer riding my motorcycle because it's electric, not necessarily because I'm on a motorcycle, but I feel safer riding that than I do my own car. Like, there are so many safeguards in place on my motorcycle to stop it from melting itself. And the other argument that I love to hear is about the true efficiency of electrics. Like, oh yeah, you're riding that electric, but guess what? It got powered by coal, so it's not really, okay. It costs more coal to run my refrigerator than it does for me to charge my motorcycle. Now, cars are a different story because of the size of the packs, but when it comes to a motorcycle, my refrigerator uses more energy in an hour than it does to charge my motorcycle. So I'm not too really concerned about the coal that's being used, even though my power grid's done by nuclear. But whatever, buddy, whatever makes you feel more confident in the comments section.
For sure. So just curious, what is the battery? Is your pouch or cylinder side? What are they doing on the Harley Livewire?
For the batteries?
Yeah, is it cylinders or the pouch?
Oh no, they're cylinders. I forget the size of it, but it's made by Samsung. Okay. Yeah, they're cylinders. I mean, the battery, the tech, it's probably from 2017, 2018, I would think, because the bikes came out in 2019, late 2019. So, I mean, even though the bike,
like Harley's stepping up, and they got some new stuff coming down the pipe that you're excited about.
So they've got the Del Mar that's coming out second quarter of this year. I have mine on pre-order. I don't know if I'm going to follow through with it just because I already have 2 motorcycles, and I don't think that I need a third one. It's going to be a smaller tier than what the Livewire is. The Livewire is their Halo product. the Del Mar, it's going to be more of I don't want to say a city ride. It's akin to what the Zero
Like a
FX would
Sportster.
be. Kind of, yeah. It's got a smaller battery. It is level 2 enabled. It's not level 3. It's not DC fast charging. From what I've been able to gather, it's right around a 10.5 kilowatt battery with a 2-hour charge time at level 2. And so that I think they said it's a 100-mile city, and I would say maybe 40 to 60 on the highway. So it's not really meant to be a long traveler. I think it's more for in and around town, which is what the Livewire was originally advertised as. So the Del Mar, that is their S2 architecture. The Livewire is their S1 architecture. Harley's coming out with an S3 architecture probably in the next 2 years, and that's going to be an even smaller frame size. So I think it's going to be a mix between an electric bicycle and an electric dirt bike, something in between there. So again, not very long range. I would think it would probably be like a 3 to 6 kilowatt battery. But again, it's going to bridge that gap between electric bicycles and electric smaller bikes.
Okay.
And then
cool.
they have the S4 architecture, which I think is around 2025, 2026. And that's when you're going to start to see cruisers. That's when you're going to start to see a heavier frame, maybe not the pack. I would hope that the battery tech is a little bit more advanced by then. But that's when you're going to see them targeting the cruiser culture. So that'll be your longer range electric motorcycle from them. But
nice.
But I mean, they're constantly working on different ideas, different production ideas. I mean, they've got probably 12 to 15 models that they're always, working on conceptually, not obviously something yet, but they're exploring into this culture because, I mean, just like Jochen Zeitz said, the CEO of Harley-Davidson, he said it a few weeks ago, is in the next 2 decades, Harley's going to be all electric. And so they're using Livewire as that test bed or as that tip of the spear to get them there, I think.
Interesting stuff. And no pun intended, but there will be resistance from the hardcore Harley folks. Anything
new, you're going to get that. I'm sure that whatever the new thing is in 20 to 30 years, that I'm going to be there resisting it as well. Like, no, it's all lithium. You got to do lithium,
Right.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure then it'll be like cornstarch or whatever, like whatever it's going to be. But
yep.
People are afraid of what they don't understand and what they don't know. So
change is hard.
That was the favorite thing about my Ducati, was because it was a V twin, basically a Harley on steroids with Desmotronic valves. I could pull up to a Harley shop and the guys are out there, oh, right on, or I could go with the rice burner. So I could go to both crowds and was accepted. I didn't find that resistance. So that was really cool. It was just pure luck. I wound up the shop I was working at told me about the bike.
Yeah, people are afraid of change. They don't want to see it, but I think that Harley's smart. They try to start it off going towards a sport group, because the Livewire, it's not a cafe racer, it's not a cruiser, it's kind of in between that and a sport bike. But they kind of stepped back and said, okay, let's start back with an earlier or a younger demographic and get them used to electric bikes going up. So that way, when that S4 does come out, you already have close to a middle-aged group of riders that are already, that's what they grew up on, was electric motorcycles, because maybe they rode the Del Mar, or maybe they rode the Serial 1, which is these electric bicycle. Maybe they started off on that, or their little push bikes that they have for little kids, electric push bikes. And so they're growing up, they're evolving with the generation as it gets older. And so I think in 20 to 30 or 10 to 20 years, I think Harley will, as long as they continue on the path that they're going, I think they will be dominant in the electric motorcycle space, because they're targeting that younger demographic and then growing with them with their lineup. I think it's a smart move.
All right, gentlemen.
It's very exciting.
I think we need to cut this off because nobody listens to 3-hour podcasts, but we could talk forever. So I appreciate
they're sitting at a charging station right now. What else are they going to do?
That's right. All right, Ben, I really appreciate your time, and we're going to watch your channel closely. So stay in touch. Maybe we'll do a reprise after your big trip. That'd be fun.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, and good luck to everybody in their electric enterprises.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ben. That was really good too. I'm excited about the encouraging future there. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's going to be electrifying.
All right.
Another pun. Good one. If you enjoyed or learned from this episode of Zero E Michigan, please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Visit our YouTube channel for other related videos at youtube.com/@0E-Michigan.